So if you're on a condo or HOA board, you know there's this ticking time bomb, kind of hidden in most budgets. Yeah, it's a problem that builds up so quietly for years, and then all of a sudden, it just explodes into a full-blown crisis. Okay, let's dive into this thing and figure out how to defuse it.
Ah, there it is. The one sentence that makes every homeowner's stomach just drop. You know, it's a phrase that's just loaded with anxiety and the absolute dread of getting hit with some unexpected five-figure bill.
And you know, for the volunteers on the board, it feels like a personal failure, doesn't it? This isn't just about the money, it's about the trust your neighbors put in you. But here's the thing. This situation almost never happens because people are being careless. It happens because there's just no clarity.
All right, let's get right to the heart of it. We're talking about reserve funds, right? That's the money you're supposed to be putting aside for major repairs down the road. And when those funds are low, well, it's really not a question of if you're going to have a crisis. It's a question of when.
A healthy reserve fund is basically your community's financial shock absorber. It's the one thing that protects every single owner from the financial gut punch of a failing roof, a busted-up parking lot, or elevators that are on their last legs. It literally turns a future crisis into a totally predictable, manageable expense.
So, how can you tell if your association is kind of sleepwalking towards a financial cliff? Well, there are some classic warning signs, these common traps that even the most well-meaning boards fall right into. Let's see if any of these sound a little familiar.
Okay, this one right here is probably the most common and the most dangerous assumption you can make. You walk the property, the paint looks fine, the pavement seems okay, so you figure, hey, we can kick the can down the road on planning for big repairs. But the truth is, it's what you can't see that ends up costing you the most.
And this is a perfect real-world example of that. There was this one coastal community where the deck posts looked totally solid from the outside, but inside, salt and moisture had caused them to rot completely from the inside out. Which should have been a small, manageable repair snowballed into a massive six-figure catastrophe. It's just a huge reminder that you have to plan based on timelines, the expected life of your materials, not just on what things look like today.
Here's another classic. Budget time rolls around, and of course, nobody wants to raise the monthly fees. So the board makes a decision. Let's just reduce the reserve contribution, just for this year, to give everyone a break. It feels like a responsible, short-term solution. But that just this once thinking, oh man, it can have absolutely devastating consequences down the line. I mean, look at this 24-unit association. They cut the reserve contributions by 60%. And for a little while, it probably felt great. But then their driveway and their decks failed at the same time, and boom. Every single owner got hit with a special assessment between $8,000 and $12,000. Delaying the pain doesn't make it disappear, it just makes it bigger.
And you've got to keep your eyes peeled for these other red flags too. A budget that only looks balanced because you're starving your reserves, that's just a fantasy. If your percent funded level drops below 50%, you are officially in the danger zone. And pushing off that 20-year roof project just because it feels like a lifetime away, well, that's a recipe for disaster.
Okay, so if just guessing is so dangerous, what's the right way to handle this? The answer is to use a professional, data-driven approach that completely takes all the emotion and guesswork out of the equation. It's called a reserve study.
So what is a reserve study really? Think of it like a complete financial roadmap for all of your community's physical stuff. It's got two key parts. First, there's a physical analysis that identifies every major thing you're responsible for, from roofs to roads, and figures out its remaining useful life. Then, the financial analysis creates a long-term funding plan to make sure the money's actually there when you need it.
And this is where things get really serious, legally speaking. As a board member, you have what's called a fiduciary duty to act in the best interest of the association. That just means you have to make smart, responsible decisions. And ignoring long-term problems, that is not smart or responsible. A reserve study is a core tool for meeting that legal and ethical duty.
Now, I know a lot of you are probably thinking, wow, a full engineer-certified reserve study? That sounds really expensive and complicated. And you're not wrong, it can be. For a lot of smaller associations, that's a huge barrier to entry. But what if there was a way to get the clarity you desperately need without all that initial cost and complexity? This table really lays it all out, doesn't it? A traditional certified study can cost thousands of dollars and take months.
But now you've got these preliminary assessment tools, like the one here called ReserveScan, that can give you a really clear financial picture in just a few days. They're designed specifically for that crucial early planning and budgeting stage.
And it's pretty interesting where these tools come from. This one, for instance, was actually created by a longtime condo board member who is facing these exact same challenges. It just goes to show you how these solutions are often born from real-world, on-the-ground volunteer experience.
And the process for getting one of these preliminary reports is usually super straightforward. You just provide some basic documents and a few photos, and a system analyzes all the data. It might use cool stuff like satellite imagery to check dimensions, and then it crunches the numbers against a huge national database of costs and lifespans, and then a board-ready report just lands right in your inbox. Simple as that.
And the cost for a preliminary report like this, it's often just a few $100s. For less than $300, you can get a 30-year financial snapshot of your community's biggest future expenses. That's a level of accessibility that puts this kind of crucial insight within reach for pretty much any association, no matter how small your budget is.
Now, it's really important to be clear about what these tools are and what they aren't. As this quote points out, they are not a replacement for a full-blown certified study that your state or lender might require. Think of them as a powerful early warning system, a really practical first step to get your bearings and start planning responsibly.
So once you have this kind of information in your hands, you can finally move away from that place of anxiety and just pure guesswork and move toward a place of confident, proactive planning. You can finally get ahead of the problems instead of just constantly reacting to them.
And listen, there's a growing sense of urgency here. More and more states are looking at laws that will require certified reserve studies. Rhode Island's proposed bill is just one example. The trend is crystal clear. Proactive financial planning is going from being a best practice to a flat-out legal requirement. Getting ahead of this curve is just smart.
So what's the big takeaway here? It really just boils down to this simple action plan. First, as a board, you have to formally acknowledge the risk. Second, get a baseline. Use a preliminary tool to see where you actually stand. Third, use that data to adjust your budget. Fourth, talk to your owners. They handle small, planned fee increases way better than huge surprise assessments. And finally, make this an annual checkup, not a once-a-decade panic attack.
Because at the end of the day, it all comes down to this one question. The roofs will get old, the pavement will crack, and those bills will come due. The only real choice you have is whether you face that future with a clear, data-driven plan, or if you're just going to sit there and wait for the ticking time bomb to go off.